everybody. This is James Vang, Sherman Ledford here at Quest Gym in Duluth, Georgia. I'm going to start off with our introductions. And this is Sherman Ledford, so I'll go ahead and let him kind of start us off.
I've been involved in powerlifting for 40 plus years and just been working with a lot of different athletes and stuff like that. Just kind of making it quick and easy. I got a little resume here that I had to do for USA Powerlifting at the time. So my coaching philosophy revolves around preparation, but some of that deals with being a psychologist at times. So preparation does include communication with athletes, training programs, nutritional and supplementation advice, monitoring body weight, equipment advice way back when, altering and the equipment as well, because I've got a sewing facility here, advice on recovery, which I think that's a lot of people miss out on a lot of times. And that could be sleep, it could be chiropractic, it could be massage, it could be physical therapy, ice, just a whole lot of different things. So, but that's kind of like my philosophy on just being a coach. And some of my background is I've been involved in powerlifting since '81. I competed in the USPF back, long time ago when there wasn't 25 federations out there, which I think honestly has really kind of, watered down powerlifting in a lot of ways. It's just kind of sad that, you really don't know who the best of the best is. But back in the 80s, 70s, 90s, even, we didn't have, but maybe 2 or 3 federations at the most. It's just one of those things that's gotten more and more watered down, which is a little bit sad. But everybody compares herself to, people in their same genre in the fact of single ply or raw or multiply, but some people have done it all, so kind of have to kind of recognize that. But I have coached on a national level since 1986. I've coached, handled, or people at national settings, probably over 150 lifters winning national championships in different federations, USAPL, USPF, back before really got involved with USAPL when they got their IPF affiliation. So I've been a world team coach for USAPL 10 times. Also, I've been the head coach for Team Quest, who we've won 10 national championships in the USAPL back in the day when we didn't have, the raw stuff kind of explode before that. So I'm the old school, he's the new school. But we have brought into the USAPL as well. Quest was involved with the first money meet at the Arnold. So we sponsored that. I was the meet director for the first pay meet up at the Arnold, which was in 2008. It was a Quest American Invitational. So, and that took us a lot of time and just a lot of promoting and just a lot of just contact with lifters that I would have never thought would have took as amount of time as it did. But it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of really good, progress with that. And that was actually too in 2008 was really the first time that the USAPL had like a higher level or almost any level raw meet, which and that was at the Arnold as well, which it kind of exploded from there and kind of even got into the IPF a few years after that. But it was kind of like the first steps of raw kind of getting into the USAPL and just growing the membership like we never thought it would grow. That's pretty much it, except we've got a training facility here. We got 11,000 square foot training facility here. Had it for almost 20 years now. Train athletes anywhere from 12 years old to 70 years old. Competitive athletes, mom and pops. We've got trainers here that do that. I've coached NFL athletes. I've coached many national champion powerlifters, world champion powerlifters. So that's probably the schmeal right there for me.
All right, and for me, I'm James Vang. I'm a 8-time national champion, equipped powerlifting. I'm kind of going more into the realm of raw and multiply and just kind of messing with everything as well. Kind of the new school side of powerlifting, if that makes sense. I've competed on Team USA 6 times, and I've won the bronze medal or 3rd place at IPF Junior Worlds 2 times. And hopefully, as the years goes on, I'm going to try to get me a gold in the opens after the junior worlds. I mean, I've been competing for about 9 years. I've been lifting weights for about 15-ish or so years. So on my end, I'm kind of going to be the new school side of the podcast, and Sherman is going to educate us a little bit more about the powerlifting history and a little bit more about some of the things that a lot of powerlifters nowadays aren't talking. So hopefully we can kind of get this podcast going and see where that takes us.
Some of the things that really would like to bring up, we're going to have some guests coming up here probably in the next month or so. 2 guests that I've got lined up right now equal 15 world championships in the IPF. So if anybody knows how hard it is to win an IPF championship, especially back in the day when it was just the only thing that was even looked at as being prestigious. So 2 guys together. One of them, we're going to have Wade Hooper, who is one of my athletes that I handled and coached and prepared for a lot of world championships and national competitions and stuff. Known Wade for, goodness gracious, since almost 20 years now. I think the first time I went and met Wade was in '99 when he competed. I think it might have been in St. Louis. I think that was the last meet he competed at 148, and then he moved up to 165 after that and competed with Team Quest for about a decade. Had a lot of fun. He was like one of our team captains along with Brian Siders. Those 2 guys were kind of like the head and shoulders that kind of help us get to where we got, and just had a lot of good experiences with Wade and just a lot of good times. And there's going to be a lot of fun talking with him. Another person we're going to have in the next month or 2 is going to be Dan Austin. And this is somebody that goes back a little bit further, but if you're a powerlifter today in any federation and you do any kind of powerlifting, if you don't know who this man is, it really kind of should tell you that you need to kind of educate yourself a little bit more about powerlifting, because Dan Austin's probably top 2 or 3 American powerlifters all time. I mean, you win 10 times IPF World Championships. Dan lifted from 148 to 181. Just to give you a little bit about his background, he's been a strength coach for over 30 years. That's another thing that's on his calling card there. He's been involved in collegiate sports for decades and decades, and right now he's at University of South Carolina, and he's been a strength coach there for several years, especially when Coach Spurrier was there. He was involved heavily with the football and stuff, but he's been around the country and one of the generationally greatest powerlifters that America has ever had. And just a little blurb right there. The guy deadlifted 705 at 148 in a singlet, and not a deadlift bar like you see nowadays that looks like a rainbow when you're pulling on it and it don't leave the ground until it's almost to your knees. I'm talking about a real competition power bar, 705 at 148. That's something right there you just don't see every day.
I believe Dan Austin's still competing. So, I mean, you could just think about it even from a longevity perspective of how great he is, literally from the time he started all the way up until now. That's always one thing that I appreciate a lot, is just powerlifters who've been competing for a long time and still involved and even competing, at his age and still doing crazy numbers.
We've got a lot of times you'll hear me say all time, and sometimes you'll look on these lists and stuff like that, and there's different people that lifted in different eras, of course, and you'll have, the guys that were legends back in the day. And when I look at those guys, I kind of put them on the top level, and just because they've done it for so long and they were so incredibly, gifted. And on top of that, it's just like talking about Dan. You talk about somebody that's actually written a book, the book's like this thick, and it's a powerlifting book. Who's done that? Who's been a strength coach for 30 plus years? Who's won 10 world championships? We have a resource with Dan that's not really being used, and hopefully in time we might have these guys involved with us, and you might be able to get a hold of us, and through us you can contact them and get you a program or get you some information, or if you got questions or something that you can really reach out to somebody that's got a background that is limitless almost, if you really kind of look at it. But if you look at it like single ply, USA standard kind of stuff, we've got some international guys and they're in there as well. But when I talk about all time guys, most of the time I'm talking about US lifters, and that's kind of the way we're going to do this, podcast kind of stuff. We're new school, which that's James, of course. Old school, that's me. But we want to try to kind of reach out to some of these guys that are been generationally great and have them come in and talk things with them and let you kind of learn from some of the best minds and the best lifters that's ever really been. That in itself, so if you look at the U.S. all time, Caleb, who was one of our Quest lifters as well, Caleb Williams, which if you don't know who that is, that's a little sad too in itself. Caleb squatted 722 at 148 when he just turned 22 years old. I seen him in here squat 500 for 6 raw, and just another run of the day kind of deal for him. He just kind of
demolished it,
did it, and it was just something that he did. And I think there's a lot of people out there too that don't realize that, back in the day, when I first started powerlifting, nowadays, or even the last like 10 or 15 years or so, maybe even a little bit longer than that, people would have to get into gear earlier in their training because it was just that, restrictive or that much more, involved that they had to be in their gear more and more. Now, when we lifted back in the 80s and stuff like that, I mean, you could throw your gear on, 4 or 5 weeks out. I mean, it wasn't like it was giving you a lot. So you just kind of threw it on and, just went with it. So it really was almost, we did so much more raw training and so much more raw lifting. Now, don't figure or think that we were stupid enough that we maxed out every week. I see a lot of that, but it's the point to where, we would lift in rep ranges of 3, 5s, and 8s and work our raw lifts and really, really work that in the off season. And then maybe, 2 or 3 times a year you went to a meet and you maxed out in some gear that was, helpful, but not just something that gave you hundreds of pounds on your total. Like some of these guys nowadays, they put on a squat suit and it gives them 300 pounds, or they put on a bench press shirt and it gives them 300 pounds. I mean, these guys benching 1,000, I don't think many of those guys can raw bench 700, I mean, when you look at Brian Siders back in the day, I've seen Brian hit 600 for 4 raw, and it was not hard, and okay, Brian benched, 770, 800 pounds in a shirt, but the guy had some inhuman raw strength. And on the guy's shoulder press was just inhuman too. I've seen him do things and been at the Arnold when he lifted in the strongman up there and just break world records at the Arnold that strongmen had been doing for years or almost even decades. I mean, even when Mark Henry kind of first came on the scene and won the Arnold, I mean, that was doing incredible stuff. But I mean, you got Zydrunas Savickas and guys like that have just done there and done things like that. And Brian would come in, first couple times he's there and break some more records. If it was a deadlift or a press or a clean and press or whatever, I mean, he was just inhumanly raw strong. There's no equipment in that, buddies. I mean, it's just run what you brung and go work on it some more and come back. So, but I just feel like there's so many people that just have this feeling that, the raw lifting is the thing that everybody is kind of phasing towards and stuff like that. And that's great and good, but just realize that back in the day, there was a lot of guys really, really raw strong, but they just didn't max out. I mean, if I went to the gym and I did my bench, I would go in the gym and I just regularly went in the gym and bench 405 for a couple 5 sets. And, I didn't think about trying to bench 500 raw. I just didn't even think about that. I just tried to get stronger in my rep range. And then hopefully at the meet, a couple times a year, that's when I run everything that I had and tried to put it in there and get the best total I could and place as high as I could. So, but we want to try to bring in some of these old school guys that some of you guys really might not, know. And we're going to have some guys, I think, over the next few months that you'll really, really enjoy hearing from. And they're going to be able to really give you some information that you might not have heard before.
Yeah, and I think that's really good too, because, nowadays you hear like so many new lifters and even some, lifters around in my generation talk about, some of the greatest lifters ever. And I feel like, for people who are as young as us to be talking about who's the greatest of all time and not even have all the information, I feel like that's a little too disrespectful on our part to be talking about how like someone like Ray Williams could be like the greatest power lifter of all times. And again, you know, Ray Williams is kind of like in his own little realm of humanity, you know, but not to take nothing away from him, but there's so many other people I think that came before him that we need to also recognize. And the time period that we're lifting in 2020 is totally different from the 80s and the 70s and the 90s as well. You know, I feel like people also forget like the struggles that people went through during those times and still had to do those unhumane totals, kind of like a total that I'm catching right now, trying to catch Dan Austin. I mean, his total was 1714.
1714.
And that was kind of like the total that we were trying to catch or try to be around with today's equipment, even with Dan Austin's knowledge base on top of what I know now. It's still very difficult just to kind of be around that 1714 total. So I'm hoping, you know, the next meet that we do, hopefully at Open Nationals, I can finally clutch a 1700 plus total and kind of put myself within that realm of top 5, and then eventually even get into some, you know, looser gear or gear that is more similar to the old school type gear, and maybe try to get those totals as well, you know, and kind of just see where my strength and my skill and everything that I know all the way up to this point compares to the all-time greats.
I think what James is talking about sometimes too is, you know, people don't realize that the dedication that you have to have and the amount of time that you really need to put into something. And you'll see, and I'm not going to sit here and try to bash anybody, but you know, I've been involved in international powerlifting for 20 plus years, 30 years. And I mean, I've just seen some guys, you know, in Europe and stuff like that, they kind of come and go. And it seems like a lot of times these guys are just, you know, almost like just used up and thrown away, and the next guy's up, and then they're just trying to run this guy on the ground. And we've had guys in America like Dan Austin, good gracious alive, the guy's 60 plus years old, and he's still, you know, he's done raw lift in the last 2 years and done some lifts that were just incredible. I mean, the guy's still deadlifting over 600 pounds. Another guy that's been around forever and ever that you might not heard of or might not know is Tony Conyers down in Florida. And Tony's came and lifted in my American Invitational in 2006 and broke like 4 or 5 world records. And the guy was in his late 40s or something like that. He deadlifted 678 at 165, you know. And I mean, the guy's still deadlifting over 600 pounds, and he's 60 plus years old. So there's some guys out there that really need to be, you know, talked about and recognized and maybe learn from. I mean, these guys, Anthony Conyers, you know, he's trained and dealt with so many lifters. He got a gym he goes to down in Florida. He actually, and this is a little fact on the side, he's a preacher, and he actually married Malik Durston and his wife. So, I mean, Anthony is just one of those guys that's special, and he's done raw lifting and has some of the highest totals all times in that. He's done multiply lifting and had the all-time total in that for years and years and years. And some of his single ply numbers is some of the stuff that James is chasing right now. I mean, his best single ply total at 148 is 1740. And the guy was just a beast, you know, a great squatter, a great deadlifter. You know, I mean, the guy was high 600s at 148. I mean, he was incredible. I saw him lift many times and had him come and lift it at our meets as well. I've seen him in Georgia lift many times, and down in Florida at WPO, I've seen him do all kinds of things. So, but there's stuff out there that, you know, people need to kind of realize are other resources and stuff, and just have somebody that has that kind of background that has just done it for eons and still doing it. I mean, you can look at another guy like Dave Ricks. I mean, good gracious, Dave trained in my gym for probably 3 or 4 years when he lived down here in Atlanta. And I actually coached and handled him to his highest total at 198 down in Pan Americans years ago. He had the American record at 19. I think at the time he had the heaviest 10-time body weight total in the USAPL history of like 1980 something at 198. So, I mean, Dave's an incredible lifter, and he's still lifting. I mean, he's lifting raw now, and he just seems like he just we won't just, it just almost seems like he even almost gets
Limitless.
better. It's just unbelievable. So, but some of these guys have lived it for a long, long time. And one of the things with James, he's been lifting for about 8 years now. I met him. How long ago was that, James?
I met you December of like 2011.
So it's coming
So
up.
literally going into 2012 collegiate nationals. So roughly 8 or 9 years.
So, and people don't realize, sometimes people they've got the engine running wide open in the red line all the time, trying to make me stronger, make me stronger, make me stronger. And sometimes it's better to get strong, but almost like I've said many, many times to lifters, it's just, I want to let you be strong. I want to let you be strong, not just have my foot on the gas 24/7 and, you break, because there's been a lot of people do that. And we're trying to, say here that there's sometimes a way to do it that you can extend your career and you can be doing it a long time. And it's like James right now, he's going to his 8th year and he's chasing Caleb. He's chasing Conyers. He's chasing Dan Austin. He's chasing Osby Alexander. And if any of those guys that I just mentioned right there, and you're a lightweight lifter and you don't know those guys, I mean, goodness gracious, it's almost sad, because those guys did it and were just incredible in their times, and it needs to be kind of recognized. And maybe let's even learn from those guys. Let's learn from those guys that did it and are even still doing it. So.
Yep. And honestly, that's kind of one of the things that I've noticed as well, especially like with a lot of these new generational lifters, we tend to like feel like we have a short time frame to produce the strongest version of ourselves. And I think something that I've learned from Sherman, like throughout my lifting career, because I was very much like that when I first started back in 2011 and 12, where like I'm just trying to show off the strongest weights that I can do, not realizing that, powerlifting is more of a marathon than it is a sprint. Sometimes your best total isn't going to come right away. There's a lot of things that you have to learn throughout the years in order to get better, such as like learning how to prep correctly, how to lose body weight. Something that I'm getting into right now, to make myself a better lifter is the massage therapy and the chiropractic stuff, pinpointing a lot more of my supplementation and literally taking one step at a time. Every single year, just getting better at one phase or one aspect of lifting. And I feel like as of right now, after all the years that I've been lifting, there's been way more gifted people compared to me who maybe started around the same time as me and no longer powerlift anymore. They're not involved anymore. And I just feel like in order to be one of the greats, longevity, learning from the best of the best and taking that knowledge to the next stage and keeping your body healthy so I can compete at 60, such as these greats, and still be doing monstrous numbers. So I'm hoping, for whoever's listening to this podcast, that you can take away from the knowledge that came before us, going into what we know now. That way we don't lose ourselves in what we think is reality today, not realizing that there were people who are way more amazing than us, and we just happen to have the limelight right now.
I think a lot of that has to do with the internet, and I just feel like too, sometimes the internet pushes athletes to max out more than they should. And it's not about, the show. It's more about the go, and sometimes if you have too much show, you're going to lose your go. So, let's be, smart about what we're doing and being constructive and showing athletes how to have a long career and how to excel over a longer period of time, even up into your 40s and 50s, and I want to give a shout out to Newt Douglas. Recently, Newt totaled 2044 at 183, and I'm going to tell you how he did it. It's not real hard. The guy's been doing it since he was a teenager, and his dad was a world champion. And then he had somebody in front of him.
Douglas, right?
Jeff Douglas is Newt's dad. If you don't know who that is, that guy was a legend in his own time as well. I mean,
open world team coach as well currently.
And an open team world member for many years on the USAPL team. And And he IPF. I mean, he was involved in the IPF for years, in the USPF, and even that far back into the USAPL and stuff like that. Coming to nationals, lifting, doing just crazy numbers up in his 40s and stuff. So, and the time and the people that Newt has been able to learn from, and then the person in front. There was a person in front that Newt really drove towards, and that person's Wade Hooper. I mean, Wade Hooper was probably, in my mind, the greatest 165 lifter in American history. In single ply gear, Wade Hooper. And if you go and look at the records and the totals and stuff like that, Wade will have the highest total. You know, he totaled 1890 at 165 in single ply gear. I don't know how many world records he broke in the squat. You know, I don't. I mean, it's multiple. I've been in so many competitions where pick a number, Wade Hooper, world record, Wade Hooper, world record, Wade Hooper, world record. I mean, he's coming out, and I mean, he was just one of the best squatters of that generation. So, and he himself was a 5-time IPF world champion. And seriously, I don't know, and I would have to kind of go back and maybe do a little bit of research, and I should know because I'm old school. But Wade won a junior world championship. He won multiple open world championships, and he won a master world championship. Now that, buddy, that's a career right there. And I mean, he came from a good high school background. Then he went to Louisiana Tech. And if you don't know that part of powerlifting, what Louisiana Tech was back eons ago when they won probably 15 or 20 collegiate national championship, team national championships, those guys dominated. And Wade was a big part of that. I mean, and Wade's as a powerlifting coach too. He's been a powerlifting coach in high school. He's coached and helped Louisiana Tech powerlifting. I mean, he has just been involved in powerlifting for decades. And that was the person that gave Newt his gas, because he wanted to be what Wade was. You know, when he was lifting, he started off at 165, you know, and just trying to just be better than Wade, be as good as Wade, and then moved to 81, and he wanted to beat Wade's total. He wanted to squat more than Wade did. He wanted to do more than Wade did. And those days are kind of lost now because people just don't know the history in it. And it's just something that if given the opportunity to know that you're in that realm, you know, like James chasing Dan Austin, you know, or Anthony Conyers or Caleb Williams or something like that, or Newt chasing Wade Hooper, you know, I mean, those guys, you know who these guys are. And it just kind of puts you in context of where you're really at. And I want to kind of say that, you know, the total that Newt hit just recently, 2044, put it in context. The best total that Ed Cohen had at 181 was 2025. Now that was 100 years ago, probably in limited gear. So, okay. But that's some context right there. If you're mentioning the context with Ed Cohen, I don't care what weight class it is, you're a bad man. So yeah, that right there is something special. Almost a 620 Wilks, I think, something close to that. So, I mean, it's crazy. And I would have never, in my opinion, when I saw him lifting when he was probably a teenager, I saw him drop, I don't know how many deadlifts in the low 600s. And I was just like, this kid's never going to be, you know, a world class lifter, because he just is not going to be able to hold on to a deadlift like he needs to do, you know. But the dude, he overcame that. I mean, he deadlifted 733. I mean, for that weight class, you know, that's the real right there. I mean, after squatting 800 pounds on a stiff bar. I'm not talking about deadlifting 733 on a bar that looks like a rainbow, you know, and the plates are all the way to the end with straps. I'm talking about a powerlifting bar, you know, after you squat 800 pounds, you know, and then you bench 500 plus pounds.
Yeah, PR.
Then you go and you deadlift 733. I mean, that is something right there that is something you have to really kind of give somebody some props and say, hey, man, you kind of just tip their cap, you know, and say, hey, that was pretty badass. So.
Yep. And in case you were wondering, you know, you can catch Newt on social media, and he's going to be working with Quest Nutrition a little bit more in the future. So hopefully he's going to be one of the highlights that, you know, if you follow this podcast, you're going to be seeing more of. So if you want to see someone at that caliber, just stay tuned, and we'll kind of continue to show them off a little bit. So keep that in mind.
Let's recap the last couple weekends, James, that we had with you and Malik.
Okay, so I think my meet was about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
We competed at in Suwanee, Georgia, at No Excuse CrossFit. So somewhere around like 10, 15 minutes away from Quest Gym. The goal, I think, that day was to squat 633, bench maybe like 462 or 468, and then maybe pull like 617 or 622. And I think that total would have put me at like 1700 plus, 1719. So literally eclipsing Dan Austin 1714. But again, not every day is going to go the way that you plan.
Almost no day.
And, with all the hiccups that happened during that day, really just put it into perspective. Like, even if I'm strong enough to do some of these numbers, if you can't do it during game day and overcome the, the problems of that day, then it doesn't matter how strong you are, right? I ended up totaling 1686 or 765 kilograms. I clutched the 633 squat. We had a little slip up with the bench shirt,
and that was not James' fault. So that right there was just one of those kind of things that just kind of happens unexpectedly, and we just had an issue where we had to kind of take it off, and we missed the first attempt, which just kind of put us behind. So, and that was just kind of a cluster F, but we just kind of had to do the best we could and just run with what we brung. That's what it is.
Yep. So. And luckily, even though we had to skip the opener, I was maybe in my mind, even though I got 2 white lights, I got the second attempt. And then, as weird as it may sound, we went up to 457, which was 22 pounds, so 10 key jump, after the hiccup that we had with the 435 for my second attempt. And that 457 actually ended up being even easier. Again, shout out to Kurt St. Romain for, giving some tips where we can kind of like, mess with the shirt a little bit in order for me to even clutch that weight. The good news about that lift, though, is that I was able to perform a 457 bench, fairly well under some really crazy circumstances. And I'm really looking forward to, hitting some bigger numbers and even world record numbers in the future in the bench. And then
one little blurb about that too, just probably 6 weeks or so before that, James, we had a mock meet here in James Bench 470 there.
Yeah. So the potential is through the roof on the bench, if we can, get everything together correctly. But again, no meet's ever going to be like that. So, and then my deadlifts all went according to plan, honestly. The one thing that I didn't plan on was my calluses ripping. So I used to do mixed grip, where these calluses usually end up ripping, the middle finger and the pointer finger. And one of the things that I wanted to work with Sherman, especially since I just moved down to Georgia, about 6-7 months ago, is hook grip, because I have a broken thumb. I don't know if you guys see that little joint.
I don't see how you can't see it.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see that joint sticking out, but I feel like, ever since my thumb broke, I've been kind of hovering around a 600 deadlift, and I haven't really been able to clutch it really cleanly because of that broken thumb. With the pressure, the amount of money that you're spending, competing in another world 12 hours, into the future or in the past or something like that, eating food that you're not used to. This thumb was kind of like holding me back from cleanly lifting a 600-pound plus deadlift. So one of the goals of this meet was to test the hook grip technique that me and Sherman's been messing around with since I moved down here. And I was able to deadlift, was at 556, super easy.
Yes.
595, super easy, looks super nice. And then when we eventually got to the 617, in order to clutch a 1700 plus total, both of my ring finger calluses ripped, and I left a bunch of blood on that bar. So if you're going to miss a lift, right, make it look epic. So it's pretty epic. Luckily, watching the video over and over again, the weight was going to come up. It was going to lock out. it just so happens that my skin couldn't handle that. And again, you can't really plan for your skin not being tough enough, because again, I've been taking care of my calluses ever since 2014 when I keep missing deadlifts, and I haven't missed a deadlift off of grip strength since then, all the way up until now, because now I have new set of circumstances that I have to overcome, which is the ring finger and the pinky ring callus for hook grip.
And just everybody know his hands are like a desert. It doesn't help.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of maybe see some of that right now, how dry that is.
We got all kinds of lotion and stuff. Anybody got a hint on that? Let us know.
If you got any help with ultra dry skins, outside of what is it,
Cornhusker's lotion.
Yep.
That's just one of them old school kind of things. I mean, I know Udder cream is really good too, and I've had guys use that. But I mean, Cornhusker lotion is just something that I've been using for a long time, and it's helped a lot of lifters. So, but if somebody's got some other trick out there, we would like to hear from you.
Yeah. So technically, on paper, I went 6 for 9. But if you exclude the fact that I missed my opening bench because of some hiccups, and then we went straight into the second attempt and just skipped the opener, technically it was a 7 for 9, very casual 20 key PR total. And I definitely feel like I had way more in the tank for my squats, my bench, and my deadlift might be there, just depend on the day and how well training is going. And I feel like all the things that we've been doing leading up to that point, specifically with, training hook grip, some of the nutritional advice that I've been taking from, just a bunch of different people, Charles Shong in Minnesota, he's a bodybuilder, been working with him to help, keep my calories and intakes and things like that kind of under control, listening to Sherman Ledford and some of his advice on what I should eat, what supplementation we've been taking. And literally, honestly, first meet working with Sherman and the new Quest Nutrition products that we got coming in. We got a new pre-workout that Sherman's working on called Nitrous. And we kind of did that along with a couple of other things with the supplementation. And again, 20 key, I should say. So 44-pound PR total. And I haven't really been able to put on, like every year I'm maybe getting like 2 to 5 pound PRs in my total. So it's not like it's anything big. And then you put it all together to the meet 3 weeks ago where we didn't even have the greatest day. And casually, I was able to hit a 20 key PR, which is kind of like unheard of when you're kind of like in the realm of a 600 Wilks, area.
Definitely.
And it takes a really, really, really long time in order for you to get better. But, what this meet literally showed me, especially with the help that I'm getting from, Team Roar, Josh Roar, Sherman Ledford here, all the nutritional advice and supplementation advice and everything that I've been able to kind of put together. Chiropractic from, Chiro for Sports, Dr. Ho, taking care of my body and just kind of doing all of this stuff literally like as a lifestyle. It's not like something that I feel like is a hassle for me to do. It's just something that I know I need to do in order for me to get to that level that, Dan Austin and all these other greats are before myself. And I'm really hoping, in the future, me and Sherman can kind of put on a show for you all at Open Nationals. But until then, that's currently what happened 3 weeks ago at my meet.
It's coming, guys. It's coming. Just like, and I'll let you know another thing, almost like what I was talking about, Newt Douglas, having Wade out in front of him. I mean, you got somebody like that that you involved with. I mean, and Wade and Newt's dad are like this. I mean, they're like great friends. So that's just another thing that it just drives somebody to strive to be great, and one of the things that James has for him, I mean, Caleb Williams was down here with me. He lived at my house. He worked at my gym. He had the benefits of everything that we do, and with just the information and the sources and all the kind of stuff we had with, just knowledge and just recovery and supplementation and diet and everything like that. That's the person that James now is trying to chase. I mean, he's told me, and I've heard it come out of his mouth, I don't know how many times. One of these days I'm going to catch Caleb. One of these days I'm going to catch Caleb. Well, one of the things you got to think about, James has been powerlifting for 8 years. And Caleb totaled 1769 at Worlds back in 2006. and he was 22, just turned 22 years old. He'd been powerlifting since he was like 14. So inevitably that's almost the same time frame, and James is coming up on him, but and that's what we're trying to kind of try to emphasize to people, don't try to get strong overnight. Don't be maxing out 4 times a month. I mean, it takes time to build a foundation. It's just like building a house. You got to build a foundation, and we're building a house here. You got to put the foundation in strong, and build yourself over a period of time and get strong, and know that you're just going to progress. Maybe not at a blizzard pace, but you're going to progress and get stronger over time. And it's something that you're going to be able to do for a long time and enjoy.
Yep. And, building strength over a period of time, literally just helps out your tendon strength and your, bones and stuff like that get acclimated to these crazy heavy weights, and I feel like when people are doing like 50 to 75 pound PRs in one lift, per year, and how long is that going to last? So sometimes, some of these meets, we don't go to powerlifting meets and just lift as heavy as we can unless it's for the world championships.
And you have to.
Yeah. But generally, the goal of every meet, I feel like, that we do is literally very precise, and it's planned. This meet, I don't have to go, balls to the wall with my squats, and let's just focus on my bench or my deadlift and really see what I need to work on for that, if a certain lift is already at the world level, if that makes sense. So I think, this meet really just put it in perspective, like, the fact that I feel like squats for myself has been like almost exploding. So I feel like if training and everything goes well, I would be able to put like 660, 670 on the bar and squat that with confidence. Now, if my squat's already at that world level and my weaknesses is like my bench or my deadlift kind of lagging a little bit, then maybe for these next few meets or even training protocols, we're not going to be so focused on my squat. Kind of let my hip and everything and my lower back and things like that kind of rest from a slighter deload on one specific lift, and then just really hone down on the bench technique and the deadlift technique and take that to the world stage and see where that takes me. And I feel like, with all the things, with all the resources that I got here and all the help, and again, shout out to Doc Holloway as well. Doc Holloway was a really big reason, and somebody that I was chasing when I started powerlifting as a youngin'. And he was literally the guy that gave me all of his lifting equipment. He was the one that even made it possible for me to compete. So you can just imagine like Team Quest and all the great lifters that have ever been involved with Sherman or some of his meets are literally just me picking at each of them and trying to learn the best that I can from why Caleb has a 722 pound squat, why Dan Austin has a, 705 deadlift, and technically right now I would be the man for the bench. So hopefully in the future, people will ask me how I got my bench so high. So,
and I think something that misses on a lot of people when they start talking about, people love to talk about the GOAT. And for powerlifting, honest to goodness, to me, to be the GOAT, and I could mention a half a dozen guys that I think are in that conversation. But think about somebody that doesn't have a weak lift. That person, when they go to a meet and you're a world class or close to a world class in every lift, dude, you're going to be hard to beat. You're going to be really hard to beat. And there's a lot of people that won't work their weak lift like they should. And it's exactly what James was talking about. And it's almost exactly what Newt did here just recently. Newt has squatted, more than 804 before, but he was really focusing on his bench. He never benched 500 before. He had never, hit that big 730 plus deadlift before. And that's what he was wanting to really put out there. So he knows he's got that in his back pocket when he goes to Worlds. So, work your weaker lifts. When I lifted, my weak lift was my squat when I first started, because I was like 198 pounds and I was 6'2". Well, of course, my squat's probably not going to be very good. So, but I worked my squat more than any other lift. I was a pretty decent bencher and okay deadlifter, pretty good. And I had to just work my squat. And when I came into the gym if I was going to have something going on where I was going to miss a workout, buddy, it wasn't going to be a squat workout because I was going to do that every week, no matter what. So it's just one of those things that people kind of miss a lot of times by saying, okay, I'm a great squatter. I'm just going to work my squat and I'll be the greatest squatter. Well, hell, you might get a gold medal in a squat, but where are you going to be, you know, at the end of the meet? You know, you want to be at the top of the podium at the end of the meet. It don't matter, you know, if where you're at, you know, on these other lists. Hey, that's fun and it's good. I mean, it's great to set up there on the number one podium at the bench or at the squat or at the deadlift. But I'd rather be silver on all of them and be standing on the top one at the end of the day. That's
Agreed.
where you want to do, you know.
I think Michael Jordan said it best, you know, there's no point in having a 72-10 record if you don't have a world championship, you know. And, you know, I think a lot of people didn't take his words seriously until the Golden State,
Warriors.
the Warriors, right? They got what, 73-9, a better record than the Bulls, but without a championship.
What about the Patriots when they went like 18-0 and lost the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
you know?
right.
I mean,
Who cares then?
That's right. Who cares? You know, that's the perfect analogy. Perfect.
Yeah, I think you always told me, you know, there's 4 numbers in powerlifting, you know, and you would ask me which one is the most important one. And obviously, when I was a youngin', I said the deadlift, right? Because that was my favorite lifter in the time. And then you told me that none of those 3 matters. The most important one is the total. Doesn't matter what you get. You can have a world record here and there, but that world record is in conjunction with the winning total. Without a gold medal, technically, all those world records don't really mean much, at least in the way that I look at it.
I mean, world champions will always be remembered, always, because you can't take that away from somebody. But world records are always going to be broken. Think about that. World records over time are always going to be broken. They're going to be broken. I mean, even sometimes I've seen world records broken in a period of 10 minutes, broke once or twice. It's like, I had a world record for 5 minutes. It's like, okay, how did the meet end up for you? Well, I got 5th. You know, it's like, okay.
Nobody's going to remember you.
That's good. Nobody's going to remember that. They're not. You're going to remember it. I mean, it's going to be like, oh, that was cool. And you can maybe have a little picture of it or have it on your wall or your gym or, you know, and tell your kids about it. Hey, that's awesome. But, you know, you can't take that world championship away, man. You can't take Dan Austin's 10 world championships away from him. You can't. I mean, he's got them and you can't take it away from him. You know, he's got a world record deadlift several times over. Wade had world record squats and world record benches several times over. But, dude, that would have been forgotten if these guys hadn't won world championship. These guys broke world records and won world championships.
Yep. So, you know, the goal would be to be able to, to beat the all-time greats total on top of also winning a world championship. Hopefully, you know, I mean, I know the times are different now, but, you know, breaking the top 5 all times is just fun. But at the end of the day, you know, a gold medal has to come with that in order for it to be legit. So, and I guess from that point on, kind of going on to our next lifter.
Before we do that, James, I want you to touch base on your multiply meet that you did last year, because I don't know if a lot
this year actually.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Early
March.
did you?
Yep.
Okay.
Very early.
Just for you guys to know, we're not sitting here saying, you know, you're nothing if you're not single ply. That's what we live and die by. You know, I mean, single ply has been around longer than anything else. And if you don't think that, then you're delusional or you're just uninformed. But you know, there is multiply meets, there's raw meets, and, you know, I've coached lifters in all 3 styles. So, but James, just touch on your multiply meet for me, if you would.
Yep. So I was invited to the WPO semifinals at the Arnold Classic back in March. I qualified for that meet single ply, so that's kind of cool. But yeah,
how many people do that?
So I think when I competed at a AAPF meet, drug tested meet in Minnesota, qualified single ply, and pretty much went to the Arnold with a bunch of, you know, gear from my friends. You know, shout out Team Nemesis. They gave me a squat suit that was too big, a bench shirt that was maybe just a little too big, and I just wore whatever they gave me for deadlifts, and just pretty much put on as many layers as I could. just to kind of have fun at the, the meet. And, thanks to Team Nemesis being there, kind of wrapping my knees and kind of coaching me through all the lifts for the last 6 or 7 weeks, I was able to clutch a 804 squat. I was able to bench press 474, I believe. I missed 490. And again, the shirt feels good, but when you put on some real weight and the shirt doesn't fit, you'll really feel that. And then I ended up pulling 606, I believe, and I missed 650 by like that much. And again, part of that is me being close to Ohio during that time, because I lived in Minnesota right before I moved down during May. So we drove there, and I think because I drove there and literally competed the next day, my right glute was kind of cramping on me a little bit. And again, another mistake that I make, that I should have been taking care of my whole body and just being aware of where it's sitting. So when I got done pulling 650 to about like right here, I felt my glutes cramp and freeze up on me, and I couldn't move anymore. And if you watch the video, I actually had to like slowly let go of my hands in order to not hold 650 while my glute froze on me. So I was like stuck in almost a deadlift position for like 5 or 6 seconds, and I had to wait for the glutes to like loosen up before I was able to move. So I was that close to pulling 650 with a deadlift bar. And again, this is literally me switching from a stiff bar to a deadlift bar for 3 or 4 weeks, and 50-pound almost increase just like that.
Did you pull that double over?
Yep, I pulled that hook grip actually.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yep. So I
27 millimeter bar, guys.
Yep. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do that meet too, just to kind of build my hook grip resume a little bit. So, even just looking at the multiply numbers, I believe the all-time in any federation, I believe, the squat for the 148 weight class was like 817. And I think in the WPO or something like that, I believe the squat record is only like 700 something, 777. So the fact that I was even able to squat 804 already lets me know like all the world records in the multiply I could pretty much take natural. And that makes me feel kind of good, just knowing that my ability to compete and be able to take care of myself and all the knowledge base that we have, from single ply literally transferred over to multiply super well. And I was able to already be in clutches of world record numbers, just from doing that.
What was your total? 1884?
I'm not 100% sure. 804 squat, 474 bench, and then a 606 deadlift. So whatever that is.
Okay.
So that's like 18 something, almost 19.
Okay.
So something like that.
So, and I mean, James, weighed in a few pounds over, but he was just trying to fit into his gear, folks.
Yeah. I mean, I think I weighed in 152 or 153 or something like that. And I was still too small to fit in the gear that I was given. And I feel like, that's a lot of, again, you're trying something new for the first time. I know like a lot of greats like Wade Hooper and Tony Conyers, they did everything. They did raw, single ply, multiply. So I kind of wanted to put my foot in the boat with them, So like when I do eventually end up hitting these world record numbers and, winning worlds and stuff like that, I have a resume that follows me that says that my skill set doesn't just stop at single ply. It can extend into multiply. It can extend into raw. And the best way to put it is just, I've gotten to the level where it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you take. It doesn't matter what division. I just want to compete against you. And if you feel like you got the goods, then one of these days we'll go head to head or, for whatever. So I think that's kind of what the multiply lifting has taught me, that, if you have a very strong foundation, you take care of your body and you love powerlifting the way that you say you do, it doesn't matter what division you enter. Good is just good. When you're good at what you do, you're just good at what you do, and nobody can take that away from you.
And there's people that have lived that way and been successful in different areas and stuff like that, and even almost sometimes been forced to do some things. I mean, like when a federation splits or there's a new way to look at stuff. I mean, you don't have just raw lifting; you have raw classic. Which is something that I really have an appreciation for more than the raw stuff. Not
raw with wraps, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So raw classic was with wraps, and that's something that the USAPL is actually coming out with here very soon. And I think that's going to really kind of excite, some people because, me, myself, and I've had a kind of a cranky knee most of my life. And I don't want to think I'm going to climb up anything heavy without some wraps on. That's just me. So, and I think some of these old dogs that would be the same way and say the same thing. But it's just one of those things that, as things change, don't forget the past, because the past is what got you to the future. It's just like some of these basketball players nowadays, they don't know who Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is probably. It's just like, dude, really? Okay. So, I mean, you're standing on people's shoulders, don't forget those people. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast. There's shoulders that we're all standing on. When I started powerlifting in the early 80s, there was guys like Mike Bridges. There was guys like John Cook, who was the guy that I kind of tried to, personally, I always felt like, just kind of cryptic, I guess, is like, okay, who's built like me? I don't think I want to, talk to Wade Hooper about the way that I should train, because me and Wade are totally different, stature. I'm 6'2", he's 5'4", he's built like a squatter. I'm built more like a deadlifter. So, I mean, John Cook was the guy that I kind of emulated and kind of tried to find out what he did, because I felt like we were had the same build and stuff. And it's like, okay, that makes sense to me. That's just kind of the way I want to look at it, and just finding out more what he did, and just knowing that I'm standing on those guys' shoulders, and I've tried to do what I can do for the sport, and I'm still trying to build for the sport. And another thing, like James said, we've been in the supplement industry for 20 plus years, and the economy kind of kicked us in the, back a few years ago, and we kind of had to step back and, kind of reevaluate some stuff. But now things are kind of progressing in a better way. So we're going to bring out a pre-workout pretty soon. It could be called Nitrous. I think a lot of people are really, really going to like it. We've already got several people that we've sent samples to that say they love it, and it's just something that we feel is going to go good. The Hardcore is probably one of our premier products that we've had for 15 plus years. It's a recovery drink, something that I've had people drink for decades. I mean, Wade Hooper, I think he drank it for like 10 straight years every day, and it was just something that helps you recover. And it's like turn the clock back. So another product we got, I'm re-engineering it just a little bit, as a Jack Stack, which is a pre-workout years ago with stimulant free, because I always felt like that, some of the products that you use that are really good, you want to take multiple times a day, not just one time, 3 times a week, whatever. You need to have something that's going to help you get better, and you're going to take every day. And it's just like James, when he's getting ready for competition, he's taking branched chain amino acids all the time. Day. I mean,
Hardcore.
It's just one thing that it's just going to be a staple. It's what I call a staple. It's something that you can take all the time, and I know that the recovery and just James having to, retain this body weight which he's at. I mean, if he wanted to, he could weigh 160 in probably a couple months, but it's not what we're trying to do. We try to be as great as you can at a certain weight classes. Like Wade Hooper started at 148. He was there for probably a decade, and then he was probably at 165 for a decade, and he went up to 181. I mean, he topped out at 148. Topped out, I mean, he won a junior world championship. He had the junior world record squat at 644 until Caleb broke it in 2003 or 4 at the meet up in Pittsburgh, Pan Americans or North Americans or whatever. And I mean, Wade just, went to the next level, broke the world record squats and benches at 165, and won world championships at 165. And then, just went on to the next level. But some of these things that these people had in their back pocket was just, the knowledge of supplements and trusting in us to give them the right thing. And if people think that there's a one-shot wonder for everybody, then they're really either clueless, stupid, or just don't know what they're doing. So, you have to kind of break athletes down, always kind of break it down into 3. You need somebody who needs to lose weight and get stronger. Need somebody who needs to retain about the same weight, add some muscle, lose some fat, and stay in and get stronger. And then somebody that needs to gain a significant amount of weight and get stronger. And do you feel like the guy that needs to lose weight is going to take the same thing the guy that needs to gain weight? I mean, if you do, or if you have somebody tell you that this product's going to do everything for everybody, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's not. I mean, like Brian Satters, that guy probably drank 500 gallons of Synergy. I mean, I wasn't sending Brian Satters branch chain amino acids. I wasn't doing that. It's just, weight gain, Synergy 5x5. We're going to have that back in stock, hopefully within the next like 3 to 4 months, and try to get out and just give people the knowledge how they can get better depending on what you're really looking for. If you go into a supplement place and say, dude, what's hot? What's hot? What is that? The question the guy should ask you is, what do you want? What do you want to do? I mean, what are your goals? I mean, do you want to lose 10 pounds? Do you want to gain 20 pounds? I mean, what are your goals? If he's not asking you what your goals are, you need to leave, or either you need to do some research yourself, or, contact us, and we've got different stacks that we've had in the past that we're bringing back out geared toward different athletes. That's something that we can do for you. And it's going to be helpful because it's going to be something that you really won't have to think or take that off your plate, because you're going to have something that has been tried and true for 20 plus years for multiple world class lifters have used in their arsenal and achieved many world records and world championships over the years.
Yep. So, with that said, Quest Nutrition, I feel like has been a pretty big part, kind of reiterating what Sherman is saying, like with just the bones and the joints hurting. I don't know if anybody got any joint or bone issues, but I feel like, especially when you're getting into meet prep or even, a few weeks after meet, you have to start thinking about what you can do to keep your body healthy. And if you want to be, one of the greats such as Dan Austin, Dave Ricks and these guys who've been competing for years and years and still doing some, 600, 700, 800 pound squats, then I think, some of the things that they are taking, some of the things that we're taking might be something that people want to listen to. And I definitely think hardcore by far is like the best product you could probably take as a lifter, mainly just because it helps out with sleep, helps out with your joint pains. I mean, you just feel better when you wake up the next day. I don't know if anybody ever feel like a train hit you, but if you take 2, maybe 4 scoops of hardcore, depending on how heavy you are, you're not going to feel like a train hit you. It's going to feel like you're actually going to want to get up the next day. So, with that in mind, I hope that you continue to pay attention and keep up with some of the things that Quest Nutrition is going to put out, pre-workouts and all the stuff that Sherman was mentioning about the Jack Stack, the hardcore and things like that. And we're really hoping to kind of put new products into, not just supplementation, but like things like the ice sleeves. The ice sleeve, I feel like, has been a really big part of just recovery for myself because I have an issue with my right knee. So every time I get done with a heavy squat and I feel like my right knee is giving me some issues again, I just slip on that ice sleeve and I'm good to go, So keep these things in mind.
It's called a free sleeve.
Yeah,
folks,
free sleeve.
It'll be it's on our website.
Yep. So, when you think about supplementation and literally just the whole package, I feel like a lot of people are missing out on that. So part of the goal of this podcast too is to kind of give you, some of the things that some of the best lifters ever were doing, some of their training, some of the supplements that they take, some of their training philosophies, different weight classes across the board, and see which one of these people do you resonate with the best and who you should be listening to. So generally, if you're someone small like me, maybe some of the advice that I give might be better for you versus someone like Sherman who is 6'2", things like that. With the supplementation, out of the way and, just kind of for myself and my success, we're going to kind of go on to the next person that we're going to possibly showcase a little bit more the next podcast and next episode. And that's going to be Malik Dearstein. And I'm going to let Sherman kind of talk a little bit about that before we kind of close out this podcast.
Yeah, I've known Malik for quite a few years. And he lifted in the IPF for several years. He won a junior world championship up in Canada several years ago. Just a genetic freak. I mean, if you've seen this guy, you're just going to be like awestruck. I mean, I took him to our chiropractor a week or so ago, and when I went back over there, he's just like shaking his head, like that's the densest dude that I've ever experienced or seen in my life. He's just like he's like that table right there. So, and then Malik kind of, shifted gears, kind of got away from IPF and started doing some raw stuff. We're going to kind of recap some of that stuff, but I did want to let you know, just a few weeks ago, he came down in Georgia, not perfect conditions because this virus stuff just makes everything not the way you would like to have it. And even in James meet was a factor. It's just one of those things you have to kind of deal with and stuff. But Malik came in and he broke the all-time squat record in the fact of doing over 800 pounds in wraps. Just realized as well, and I went back and I was kind of shocked myself, in single ply there's been less than 10 guys that squat 800 pounds, so that right there in itself is just inhuman. But we're gonna kind of designate a podcast with him and kind of get in more involved in that and what his plans are going forward with some of the stuff that he's going to be trying to do in the next year or two. So be looking forward to that. And guys, just know that, we're a resource, and we're going to try to be more of a resource and try to reach out to people and hopefully help them to be number one.
That's what's up. QuestNutrition.com. If you need any supplementation, any wrist wraps, belts, things like that you might be needing, hit up Quest Nutrition and look up the equipment side and get yourself some before the New Year's begin.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.